everybody! What neighborhood recently discovered the remains of 28 slaves underground, is home to a university that only stayed solvent because of the sale of 272 slaves to the state of Louisiana, and has reinvented itself more times than Madonna? Georgetown! We are going to talk today about Georgetown. We are also going to talk to you about the biggest tourist trap in the city that happens to be in Georgetown and what you should do instead when you stay away from that place, which is what we're going to advise. So Michael's going to join me today as well. We're going to take a little tour around Georgetown. I do these videos for you every week. I break down living in DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. I've lived here for over 20 years, and I know these areas very well. I go deeper than anybody. Make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss the new videos.
Now, if we did this video 10 years ago or even last year, it would be a totally different video. But Georgetown has changed a lot in the most recent year even.
Georgetown started out as the original port of the nation's capital. It became its own municipality, and then it turned into ground zero for the preppy kids at the same time in the 1980s that a huge portion of the punk movements was happening here as well. And if you're thinking, how could preppy people and the punks coexist? Well, it was the 70s and 80s, and honestly, they really could not coexist well. Georgetown was known as the best place for the indie stores at that time, and then in the late 90s, many of those stores were taken over by the larger chains. Now, about 10 years ago, a lot of those stores decided to pack up and move over to 14th Street in Logan Circle. Lots of storefronts were boarded up, and during the pandemic and riots, it was actually evident how dire the situation in Georgetown had become.
But now, Georgetown's back. It's back, baby. George Costanza. Anyone? Anyone? So it's really heartwarming to see that Georgetown is coming back, like Madonna reinventing itself yet again. In the last few months, sidewalks have been jam-packed. The restaurants have had lines out the door, and it's just great to see that it's back and that it's not, because it felt for a while like it was dying there, right?
Yeah.
A lot of empty storefronts and all of that. But neighborhoods reinventing itself yet again. And every time we sort of dive into these videos and we look at various restaurants in the area, now, with Georgetown, we've got like a whole other list of places where we're like, we need to eat there. We need to also eat there. We need to make sure we go there.
Yeah.
So I'm Melissa.
I'm Michael.
And we're going to talk to you today about Georgetown.
So let's do location first. Georgetown. It is in the northwest quadrant of DC. It's about as far south as you can go without falling over into the Potomac River. It is roughly bordered by Rock Creek Park on the east, Glover Archibald Park on the west, Reservoir Road on the north, and the Potomac on the south. Now, the Key Bridge takes you across the Potomac into Roslyn, which is in what you might say is the state of Virginia, but tisk, they are a commonwealth. They call themselves a commonwealth, one of the three in the United States. Let's get into real estate. So Georgetown's always been one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city, with a prestige that's kind of unmatched by the rest of DC. Now, Georgetown real estate is actually pretty wild. There are some single-family detached homes here, but there aren't a ton of them, right? They exist, though, and they cost a pretty penny. $2 million all the way up to $20 million. Yes, it's true. Now, there are also a handful of one-bedroom row homes that are here. There aren't many, and they might have anywhere from 500 to 800 square feet. Now, history sort of tells us that these smaller homes were actually probably like servants' quarters or potentially the homes of slaves at one time. Side note about homes and the ages here. In most of DC property records, it's actually rare to find a home where they'll say it was built at some point in the 1800s. Now, they do exist, but they don't have exact ages on a lot of these homes, and that's because of a fire that happened in land records where a lot was lost. So a lot of the homes, you might say like, wow, they really built a lot in the year 1900. A lot of times that's just a guess, purely a guess because they didn't know. And when they had to go back and sort of backtrack and put the records back together, they were like, let's put 1900 on it since we know it's at least from 1900. Anyway, so Georgetown indeed is the oldest neighborhood in DC. Many of these homes were probably in existence well back into the early 1800s. It's just there's not a lot of records that can prove it. So most Georgetown home prices are going to start in the mid $1 millions. If you want something that's close to 2,000 square feet, you are gonna pay. You're probably gonna pay close to $2 million. Yes, real estate really does cost in excess of $1,000 a square foot. Prices in Georgetown will climb pretty steadily to the $5 million point, and then there's properties that are priced beyond that into the tens of millions or more. They're typically very unique properties. They're going to have a ton of history and maybe carry a whole portfolio of famous residents who used to live there. So are there condos in Georgetown? Yes, there are. They fall into a couple different categories, I would say. There's condo buildings along the Potomac River. They offer really stunning views of the river. They also offer stunning prices and stunning monthly condo fees. You'll be paying over $1 million to live along the water and to have a view. Some of these gorgeous beauties can sell over $5 million, all the way up to $8 million. You can get into some of these buildings for less than $1 million, but you're going to be facing north. You'll probably be facing the Whitehurst Freeway, which isn't a very attractive view to have out your window and away from the Potomac. So no river view for you, no soup for you. We're on a Seinfeld kick today. There are some other condo buildings throughout Georgetown that are not on the waterfront. These buildings are typically older and more historic in nature, although some have been renovated inside. That goes for the same thing on the condos on the waterfront. There was a lot of building here in the 1980s, so you just have to know that sometimes they come with that like whole 80s vibe, which isn't always a pretty one. And one great example here is the Colonial, which is at 1305 to 1315 30th Street. This actually is a very, very old building, built in 1820. It was originally a female seminary with visitors such as Martin Van Buren, James Buchanan, and Andrew Johnson. After the defeat at the Battle of Bull Run, the building became an army hospital. After the war was over, it was converted to apartments. The building was restored in 53, and now in present day, it's getting a full makeover into condominiums.
So there's lots of shopping here in Georgetown, and there's lots to do, right? So natives are always going to lament the days where you had these mom and pop shops in the 70s and 80s, right? Commander Salamander, Up Against the Wall, Sunny Surplus, just to name a few that everybody loves to talk about. Now, as far as what happened sort of over the years is that a lot of the chain stores moved in. And so you'll definitely see that there's chains here. There's also mom and pops here. And then as time went on, 14th Street became a big thing. And the chains, some of them started to leave. So like we saw West Elm leave. We saw Barnes & Noble leave. There was an Amazon store that came here and then left. But there is good news.
Yes.
Barnes & Noble's coming back.
Yes.
June 26th, it's going to be back. And so it's opening back up at 3040 M Street. So the Georgetown Waterfront Park also provides a very scenic area for walking, biking, people picnic here. You also have a splash park behind us, which is pretty cool. And then the kiddos can play while you sit around and watch them play. Also, you've got the Capitol Crescent Trail, which is here. And that connects all the way up to Bethesda. And people can ride their bikes all the way up there, walk, traverse up that way. Yeah. So it's a really cool area. And a lot of people spend a lot of time down here.
So if you love being out on the water, you have to go check out the Georgetown Boathouse. Take a canoe or a kayak out on the Potomac River for the day, and you'll absolutely love spending time on the water here. So one of the things I love is if you're feeling lazy on a Saturday and don't feel like driving to Old Town, you can jump on the ferry in Georgetown or go to the wharf and make it easy for yourself and enjoy a boat trip on the water. One of the most amazing things about Georgetown is every April, there's the French market. Over 35 boutiques, restaurants, salons, stores all come together and really put on a show and really embrace the French history in DC and in Georgetown. Yeah. And what's really cool is the French Embassy actually did a chocolate tasting this year.
They sure did. I had clients who went to it. You know who you are. If you don't want to be on the water, but you like being near the water, from June to October, there's actually dance classes that they offer, dancing on the Potomac. And you can come, anybody, all ages, and you can kick up your heels and dance with the Potomac as your backdrop. And you don't actually have to get in a boat if that's not your thing.
There are some notable landmarks that you need to visit in Georgetown. The Exorcist Stairs usually have somebody snapping a photo when you go by. Dumbarton Oaks Museum and Gardens. Tudor Place Historic House and Garden. Those are both worth a visit. There's also the Old Stone House, which is the oldest unchanged building in DC.
All right, so you have to talk about an institution that we love so much, Blues Alley. Some of the most amazing artists have actually performed here. Ella Fitzgerald, Wynton Marsalis, Dizzy Gillespie, Tony Bennett, and also Wynton Marsalis has also recorded an album here, which is pretty amazing. They have some nonprofit organizations that are tied to Blues Alley, which is really cool. And especially for the kids, there's a summer camp for blues and jazz, which I think is super cool. You definitely have to come see a show here.
All right, this isn't quite fun, but I feel like it has to be mentioned here. So honorable mention. There's kind of these dueling service stations in Georgetown that a lot of people in the area bring their cars to. So one's the Shell station, the other one's the Exxon across the street. So for many, many years, we've gone to the Shell station. The service manager was fantastic. Of course, he was so fantastic, they promoted him and he moved on to somewhere else in the company. But then they brought in another service manager, Elizabeth, that's my girl. So whenever my husband calls her and says like, hey, I have to bring Melissa's car in, she says, which tire is it now? Because she knows I hit curbs. This is what I do. Anyway, Elizabeth's husband actually manages the service station across the street, the Exxon. And when I said to her, hey, wait, like, are you saying he's also the service manager? I should go over there? She's like, oh no, we're much better.
In December, there is Georgetown Glow, which is a festival of outdoor lights. Every Sunday, there's a flea market in the parking lot of Hardy Elementary School. That's like very, very north in Georgetown, almost Glover Park. You've also got Pinstripes in Georgetown. Pinstripes has awesome food, which I never would have expected, but it's also a great place to go bowling or play bocce ball, right? So it's a great place, obviously, that you can go and spend more than just the time that you would spend for a meal. Volta Park and Pool is probably one of my favorite parks and pools in DC. There's a playground with equipment for all ages. There's a basketball court, tennis courts, and of course, there is the pool. It does get crowded, however. The pool can kind of be like, I mean, they could reach capacity. It gets pretty crowded. The best vet in DC is also in Georgetown, and that is Georgetown Veterinary Hospital. Dr. Morgan and his wife, Chris, own it, and I have been going there with my dogs for 17 years. I love them. There's also a cat cafe if you're a cat person or you just want to kind of hang out with cats. It's called Crumbs and Whiskers. You can have a snack, play with the kitties. People love it. All right, family and kids, let's move on. Georgetown Library. It is one of my happy places. It smells good. The librarians are awesome, and it is easy to park right out front. You can have any book in the library system of DC delivered here, and they also have a really great children's room downstairs. There's reading time and other gatherings for the little ones, and the kids' room is just kind of a really great place to hang out. There's also a cooperative play location at Volta Community Center if you're able to get a spot there for your little one. Now, did you know the public elementary school that serves Georgetown is called Hyde-Addison? So before we dive into Hyde-Addison, I want to do a comparison of some stats. I live in the next neighborhood north of Georgetown that is called Glover Park. Our elementary school is Stoddard Elementary. Stoddard has 87% of their students are in boundary, meaning live within the boundaries of the school district. 20% of Stoddard is classified as English language learning, right? So 1 in 5 students are, from another country, have another language as their first language, and English is their second. Let's compare that. Hyde-Addison, 33% of students are in boundary, and 7% are classified as English language learners. This may seem like very super curious statistics that only 33% of the Georgetown Elementary School is in boundary, but there are a couple of reasons for this. So let's think about it. It's logical, right? First, Georgetown doesn't exactly lend itself super well to family living, right? Not because it's not a great place to live and not a great lifestyle. It's just that the house prices are high. Green space is limited, aside from like Volta Park and a couple other little small green spaces. And generally, the people who live in Georgetown, they do just trend older, right? Like you just don't see a lot of kids necessarily running around. But there are families in Georgetown. I know some of them. I'm friends with some of them. And I also know of the families I know, they're sending their kids to private school. So Hyde-Addison feeds to Hardy Middle School, and then Georgetown is zoned for the new high school that's coming to the Palisades. It's tentatively called MacArthur. I actually think they're going to stick with that name. They may rename it at some point, but for right now, it's on MacArthur Avenue. It opened in fall of 2023 for 9th grade and some 10th graders. All reports coming out, we're just about to finish the first school year, and all reports coming out of there are very positive. People seem to be very happy with the principal who's there. There was a selection committee. I know some parents who were on it, and they said that he's really a great guy. Now, there are a few private schools in Georgetown as well. There's Georgetown Visitation, which is high school. There's Holy Trinity, just off Reservoir Road. You've got WIS, which is Washington International School. And then there's also a charter school for students who might be interested in the arts. Duke Ellington High School is for grades 9 through 12 and got an arts focus to their curriculum.
So Georgetown's M Street really used to be the place for all the eats. It fell out of favor for a bit, but now it's actually coming back quite a bit. So you've got quite a few restaurants that are here. So hands down, the first thing I'm going to tell you is you have to go to Filomena. Filomena has to be the absolute best Italian restaurant in the city. It's got the best food. It's got old school ambiance. And it has the best cannoli ever. It's like a waffle kind of situation, and then there's cannoli in the middle. And when they say leave the gun, take the cannoli, I think they were talking about Filomena's cannoli. Another restaurant here is Il Canale. It's just off M Street and 31st on the south side. And then you also have Cafe Milano, which is a huge favorite among presidents. So you might go there. It's on Prospect Street, and you might see a famous politician or two.
You absolutely have to try Fabio Trabocci's Fiola Mare. It is coastal Italian dining at its best. It has an absolutely beautiful view of the water, and we actually did Thanksgiving there a couple years ago, and it was incredible.
We did my 50th birthday there.
Yeah, I love taking clients there. It's just during the spring, summer, and fall, it's so beautiful. And during the winter, they have the fireplaces on, and we get to sit back and enjoy.
And you usually can see famous people there, except that it's pretty dark in there that you'd have to look kind of hard. Another restaurant that you might want to check out is 1789. It's part of the Clyde's chain. It's over by Georgetown University. The cool thing about 1789, I actually always thought that it was named for the year George Washington became president. No, it's actually named for the year that Georgetown University was founded, which happened to be the same year that George Washington became president. Next door, if that's a little bit too like highbrow for you, next door is the Tombs, which is the downstairs part of 1789. And it's basically a pub that, you know, a lot of Georgetown students go to. Very cool. They got like a bar and grill kind of menu, and definitely a place that's been here for many, many, many decades that is worth checking out as well. All right. We also have to mention the restaurants that we go to for lunch when we're in our office in Georgetown, which is quite a bit. Clyde's, which I love to drag everybody to, even though it's a longer walk than some of us like to do in our high heels, talking about Hannah, our other partner. But Clyde's is also same company as 1789 and the Tombs. There's a chain all over the DC area. They crank out consistently good food. It's really, a lot of it is like farm to table. They have local people who supply everything for them, and they are consistently delicious. And they've got staples that they always have on their menu, but then they have a menu that changes seasonally as well.
You guys have to check out our other favorite restaurant for lunch, Angolo's. We love going over to sitting in a little Italian cafe eatery. It's so nice. The people who own the restaurant are so friendly. The service is amazing. Mm-hmm. I love it. And you can always go in there and get a table. The food is just so authentically made, and it just blows my mind. And it's so inexpensive for the quality of food.
Yeah, for what it is, for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you definitely have to check that one out. So my favorite salad place to eat has to be Sweet Green. It's amazing. It originated in Georgetown, actually from a couple of Georgetown students that actually started the business. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are very familiar with it because it's now everywhere, and it's made to order salads. You can order ahead. I love now they have delivery, especially when we're busy in the office. And there's just such a variety, and they constantly keep it fresh by changing the menu and just switching out all the ingredients. And I just love being surprised every once in a while with a new salad or a new bowl. And it's affordable, and it's fast, and it's healthy, which is super cool.
And it used to be in the Little Tavern building, which is like this iconic building on M Street where they sold burgers in the 30s and 40s. And they had to move because they got so like big and popular and famous and busy that they moved to a bigger location. All right, so we would be remiss to not mention that we were talking about Georgetown today, to mention Stachowski's Butcher, which is on P Street and 26th. And they just have like an amazing selection. If you're a meat eater, I am not, but you are. They just have an amazing selection of meats and all kinds of stuff. And, you'll love going in there to buy things to cook, which you do for dinner.
I do. I love it. The deli's amazing. It's just, you can go in and get high quality food if you're in a rush or just don't have time to cook dinner that night. I love going to Stachowski's. It's just such an awesome place. And their sandwiches, I cannot get enough of them.
Meat eater. And then another place that's probably also worth a serious mention is the Boulangerie Christophe, which has some pretty good pastries. They also have like pre-made sandwiches that are excellent. You go there a lot too.
Yeah, I love their sandwiches as well.
Yeah, we've eaten there.
Their iced coffee is amazing.
Very good, very good. And then La Durée is a French cafe, also very gorgeous inside. And they've got an amazing way that they display the pastries that will make you want to eat every single thing.
Yeah, I love it. Love going in there to pick up macaroons for a party.
And then don't forget, I stopped to call your mother.
Yes, have to go to call your mother.
So very famous bagel place here that everybody loves. The funny thing about this place is you'll instantly recognize it because it's a pink building, which is very pink. And it doesn't matter what time of day or night you drive by it. There are people outside taking pictures of the pink building because it is that iconic.
So if you love ice cream, you have to go to Thomas Sweets. It's absolutely amazing. And again, there's always a line. It's just kind of an icon in Georgetown. And when it's 1,000 degrees and it's humid like it always is in DC in the summer, it's the best place to go cool off with some amazing ice cream.
Yep. And then if you don't want to eat at any of these delicious restaurants and you want to cook, all right, let's talk about grocery stores. You do have to get a little bit outside of what we would say is like Georgetown proper, and you would go to maybe what they call Upper Georgetown. I happen to call it Glover Park. It's where the Safeway is, that's on Wisconsin Avenue. A couple blocks up from there, there's also a Trader Joe's if you want to keep going. There's Whole Foods another block away. If you want to keep going another half mile, you've got a Giant and then a Wegmans. So all up the Wisconsin Avenue strip, you can pretty much find everything you want.
Yeah.
Also a farmer's market on Wednesdays at Rose Park in the summer in Georgetown from 3 to 7.
Yeah, so many great options at the farmer's market. I love going there. So yeah, definitely have to check it out.
What about cupcakes, Michael? Where are the best cupcakes in Georgetown?
Melissa, don't say Georgetown cupcakes.
Why not?
Because it's basic. Everybody goes to Baked and Wired.
They have a long line. I don't understand.
That doesn't mean anything.
Okay. All right. So Baked and Wired is where it's at, you guys. All right. This is where we want you to go for cupcakes. Believe me, you will trust us and thank us later. It's going to be amazing. Baked and Wired is where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you like to split a red velvet cupcake?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Let's get the knife.
Let's do it.
Delicious. All right. We got to cut this in half. This thing's huge. All right. Choose your weapon. Wait. Let's do it like we're doing wedding cake. I lost half of it because it's so large. Okay. Oh, God, it's so good. Oh, so good. So good. Yeah, it's so good.
So, for those history buffs, let's talk a little bit about the founding of Georgetown. It predates the founding of DC as our capital because this was one of the only areas of DC where people were settled. Now, if you expected that there would also be slaves living in Georgetown, you are correct. A little bit more on this in a second. Georgetown was a separate municipality until 1871, at which Congress deemed it part of the whole city. Within the next couple of decades, Georgetown's local ordinances were repealed, their streets were renamed to fit in with the rest of the city, and they became one of us. So did you know that there is a long-standing myth in DC that Georgetown residents fought against having the metro come to the neighborhood for fear of crime? That's actually not true. So the real reason that there isn't a metro here is because of the infrastructure changes that would be required, right? To bring the metro underground safely, that was just a non-starter. They would have to underpin so many of the houses that were here, and that would compromise the structural integrity of everything that's here. So anyway, here's a photo of Wisconsin and M Street facing east in the early 1900s. And then I'm going to put up a photo of Georgetown at the same location now. Pretty interesting to see the difference. Now, in the 1970s, Georgetown was really like the OG, right, of hipster land for the city. It was known for its thrift stores and record shops. The Exorcist was partially filmed here, with the steps being the obvious scene that you will remember, where the man gets pushed down, the preacher gets pushed down the steps. In the 1980s, Georgetown became the place to see and be seen. In Maryland, the drinking age changed from 18 to 21 in 1982. But you could still drink in DC at 18 until 1986. Funny enough, guess which mayor we had actually supported raising the drinking age? Marion Barry. I wouldn't have thought that. Anyway, for most of the 80s, the city would be flooded on weekends with kids looking for a good time. Georgetown streets were straight up gridlock. And if you want to know what Georgetown was like in the 80s, I highly recommend that you watch St. Elmo's Fire. It was filmed here and it captures the time perfectly. Oddly enough, in some random tidbit of Melissa family history, my brother went to Georgetown from 84 to 88, and my parents owned a condo in what is now Glover Park, but we all thought it was Georgetown back then. And I will tell you, I remember it. Like coming here, it was like nonstop entertainment. Oh, wait, did you know? The Preppy Handbook named Clyde's in Georgetown as the definitive preppy bar for DC. So Clyde's opened in 1963 in what used to be a motorcycle hangout. Clyde's actually had the first full-size bar since Prohibition, which was kind of pretty awesome. In the mid-1980s, there was a growing punk movement that I alluded to, and some of the major players lived or worked in Georgetown, Glover Park, and other parts of Northwest. I did a punk video a couple of years ago with the girls. Definitely check that out. We punked ourselves up. I didn't look so great. The girls looked fantastic, though. And then in the 80s, the city was experiencing a pretty high crime wave. Georgetown was somewhat of a respite from the crime that was actually happening in the rest of the city. In the 1990s, when the grunge era hit, the preppies were gone. Alternative music was everywhere, and as the 90s wore on, people actually started going to other neighborhoods for their nightlife, like Adams Morgan, and everything really kind of shifted. Into Georgetown come the national chain stores and high-end hotels that began kind of a new definition of Georgetown into the turn of the 21st century. Now, in the past 5 to 10 years, a lot of those stores, like I said, had closed up or relocated to other parts of the city. The rents here are just too high for many of the retailers, and the customer base is likely as much tourist as it is local. But this spring, there has been an amazing influx of people again. There's lines again at restaurants, the sidewalks are packed, and it really does feel like the heyday is back. In 2021, archaeologists discovered the remains of 28 African Americans believed to be slaves from the early 1800s underground in Georgetown, giving us a little bit more of a glimpse into the history of Georgetown and the neighborhood. Now, one of the biggest residents of Georgetown is Georgetown University. This was founded by Jesuits, and it has come to light that in the past several years that the university has ties to slavery. So first, the big donors to the university, a lot of them were actually living in Maryland plantations. So it was money that those people made from the work of slaves that they owned that made these families wealthy enough to then donate to the school. The second and more outrageous but direct tie to slavery was in 1838. Two early presidents of the university, in a quest to keep the university solvent, sold 272 slaves to plantation owners in Louisiana. The reason that this was discovered was because the school was going to name a couple buildings after the people who organized the sale. And when students started researching into who those people were, they discovered that unfortunate tidbit of history. Now, this is Georgetown, you guys, the oldest neighborhood in DC with so much history, so much charm, so many places to chow down. The retail area is not as robust as it once was, but it's actually really getting better again. And this is very, very recent. It's like, wow, this is something to pay attention to. I kind of thought a few years ago that Georgetown had hit the skids and it was like that has-been neighborhood. I mean, it's amazing to drive through there again. It's like, phew, everything is back. This neighborhood endures. It really is like Madonna, keeps reinventing itself. And once again, it's going to thrive. I'm calling it. I'm sure of it. So that is Georgetown. If you have any questions, please contact me. My information is coming next.